Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I am here with...
Hey, Grieflings and Frightlings, it's Margaret and Anna. I have got to get ready. I'm actually moving up to Alaska and I have to get ready for the really long 1 month night.
Don't forget your sun lamp. That's right. Today we're talking about none other than 30 Days of Night. Now, I think that you guys have all gathered in our previous cast involving a film with Josh Hartnett that we like him. So we get to talk about Josh again. So that's fun. But hey, before we get into the nitty gritty, we do have some triggers we want to tell you about. Definitely lots and lots and lots of blood in this one. Animal cruelty, animal death, familial caregiving, um, dementia, elder care, familial loss, as well as manipulation, a lot of coercive relationships throughout the film. I feel like I'm missing something.
I feel like you got it looking at my notes. Yeah, you got it. The dogs die.
Child death.
Yep, child death. If you have a sensitivity to animal death, viewers, this one's going to be hard because this one is a graphic animal, not just one. So you might have to like fast forward, have somebody like
tell you when
to look away because this is a brutal. That was my notes. Brutal and gory.
It is. And the funny thing is, when the movie first came out, I went with a bunch of friends and we were like young kids, like not young kids, like 11 at that point, but we were very young adults. And all I remembered was I did not like the movie. And then as soon as I started watching it again and the dog scene, I was like, that's why I hate this movie. It just hit me. I was like, oh, because I am animal death and children getting hurt or killed. It's not for me. If it happens off screen, I'm not as bothered, but if you see it, I'm like, oh no. Teenagers in the woods, get them. Don't care. But if it's, a poor defenseless animal or a kid, it's just not my favorite.
And that's okay. And this movie, that was brutal. Like this, like God, and this is a very brutal. It's also a very visual film. I really appreciate just like the blood on the snow. Like this is a movie that's gonna cause a visceral reaction for a lot of people. It's not for the faint of heart. So this isn't like some of the ones we watch. Like if you're listening, we've done other vamp movies. This I'd say is probably up there with Blade and the amount of like blood and violence where you're gonna have to like be prepared for it. This is a group of vampires that have descended on a town that has 30 days of night and they are eradicating the town violently. So
absolutely. And this is a different type of vampire too. They are typically, we see these educated, well-spoken, intelligent, sexy creatures, right? It's like, oh, I wouldn't mind if that one bit me. No, you would mind if one of these bit you. Their teeth are gross. They're just the visual aesthetically, you can tell they're not human, right? They're walking around like people, but they do not look like humans look. Even the manner in which they communicate, it's almost like birds squawking. So it's just very different. And also the lack of communication is so different because most vampire films, they can conversate like Margaret and I are right now.
Yeah. And I love how you like touch on that this is like, oh, like Anna's saying, like a whole different group, like a whole other species. They communicate differently. The animal squawking or the guttural kind of visceral sounds that you're making. And I feel like that adds to the unnerving sense of this film. Like, it's dark out, you're walking, and then you're just hearing like these birds squawking or like that like sound that they make. And so you just know that something's wrong and they're so predatory and violently predatory. It feels like they go into like the lycanthrope a little bit to where werewolves are like, they're into that and like that animalistic, like ripping apart of somebody.
Mhm.
These vampires are those vampires. They have no respect for life. Like Anna was saying, usually we're used to vampires. Like they're kind of like, I was once human, so I have this
Mhm.
respect. I have this commonality with you.
Yeah.
No, they're like,
No.
we're hungry. We chose you for a reason. We don't have to worry
Mhm.
about the daylight, and we are gonna brutally hunt you, and we are going to be smarter than you because you think like a human and we think like a predator.
Absolutely. And unlike, oftentimes we're talking about vampires or some other supernatural trope, right? We do bring werewolves and like lycanthropy into the conversation. Um, Unlike someone who's a werewolf, generally speaking, you can watch a werewolf movie and then they wake up and they're like, oh my God, did I do that? Right? Because they have their humanity. These vampires in 30 Days of Night, they have no humanity. I would say, I feel like they're almost some sort of alien species that has come to Earth to feed because they're so different than the humans.
Mhm.
And they're shady because we have the guy that just kind of comes into town that no one knows who he is or where he's from. He's promised to become one of them, and he ends up being killed in not the most delicate way. So they're shady too. Like they don't keep their promises. They have no faith or religion, we learn, because one of the townspeople says something like, "Oh my God," and one of the head vampires, the dude from American Horror Story,
Mhm.
who also played the Soul Sucker in the remake of The Crow, which was very funny to me. Talk about being typecast. Um, he essentially says, like, God? You think there's a God or something like that. So to Western society, you have these abusive, dishonest, godless, bloodthirsty characters, which just makes them even scarier to the characters in the movie and also to the viewer.
Yes, I really appreciate how you bring that up, that how society has really romanticized vampires. And I feel like this film, it's also based on a graphic novel, goes back to when vampires were scary, they were ugly, they were monstrous. And I wonder if that was part of the point. Like, what if vampires didn't become romantic? What if they did not evolve with
Mm-hmm.
humanity and I kind of think, isn't this what they would have become from when they were first established back in lore? And they have no
Mm-hmm.
sunlight, they have to hunt at night,
Yeah.
so they lose a lot of their humanistic components and they become just this fearless alpha predator because
Mm-hmm.
that's what they've had to. And I appreciate 30 Days of Night for that, to pull us out of, like Anna's saying, they're romanticized and, oh, I wouldn't mind being bit by
Mm-hmm.
that one too. No, this is the
Yeah.
apex predator. They want to kill you. They're hungry. They have their own community. And if you think they go way back to like before God, or maybe when there were multiple gods, then of
Mm-hmm.
course he's like, God, like, are you
Yeah.
serious? Like, I've been alive for centuries. There's no such thing as God. And we see vampires actually, the older they
Mm-hmm.
get, like when somebody goes, oh God, they're like, no, like I stopped believing in God a
Mm-hmm.
long time ago.
Yeah. You know what would have to be really difficult is if someone were of a religion that appreciates multiple lives, for instance, Buddhism, Hinduism, in that general arena, and then they get turned to a vampire because you don't get to come back.
We
You're stuck.
haven't seen, I don't know if you've seen it. We're not discussing it this go around. Is it called, I think it's called Thirst, and it's either Japanese or Korean, and it is about a priest who becomes bitten and becomes a vampire. It has been on my to watch list
I need to.
forever because I was like, that has got to be one of the most fascinating
Yes.
movies. So we'll have to watch it and
Hmm.
talk about it. I know that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
it's by
absolutely.
another culture too. So I'm guessing that adds to the richness of being a priest bitten.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, and just how terrible these vampire creatures are. I wonder do they do this once a year? Do they just find, a town that's dark 15 or 30 days and just eat and that's all they need? Or are they consistently going place to place to place? And at some point they're going to run out of places, right? Because the town is decimated. How do you revitalize and restore it? That takes years and years and years and years. It's not something that's done overnight. So if they're hitting one a year or two, three, four, five a year, and if you've listened to our other podcasts, the question of sustainability comes in again, right? Humans are your food. Like, what are you doing? You're destroying your food source without any backup plan.
I think the main vampire tells another vampire, like, this was a great idea. Why haven't we done this sooner? I vaguely remember a conversation. So I just assumed that they were kind of popping to go undetected. So from here to there. And then they were like, oh, actually, why haven't we thought of Alaska before? And then, as Anna says, because it's not sustainable if they're hitting all these little towns in Alaska pretty soon.
Yeah.
People are going to start to notice and they're going to start to decimate. They are not like the Vamps and Daybreakers. They do not have the numbers. They are a little band of vamps. And did you know, as we're talking about how they communicate, I read that originally they weren't going to talk, but I believe the
Oh.
director really liked the head vamp and was like,
Mhm.
no, like, I'm actually going to change
Mhm.
this. I think that makes them that much more scarier. If they
Oh, yeah.
only went with the sounds that they made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives the, ugh. And then
Mm-hmm.
we've been talking about blood transfusions, injections, cleaning of the blood in some of our other podcasts. Get to something similar in this movie again, where Josh Hartnett's character injects himself with the Vampiroo juice, and then he has his humanity for a little while and kind of saves the town, and then um,
Mm-hmm.
he and his love interest are, you know, watching the sunrise, and kapow, he's done.
Yes. Yeah. What did you make of all of that? Like him sacrificing himself, injecting himself with the vampire juice, and then like them having their moment as the sun rose.
I thought it was very of the time. I thought it was very early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
2010s. It was very of the time. It might have been fun and more unique if we look at the population of Alaska, that there are a lot of indigenous influences, and looking at indigenous culture and folklore and um, potential solutions to the issue at hand, I feel like there would have been something really powerful about incorporating that into the film. As I said, it was very of the time. Maybe if something like that came out now, or another 30 Days of Night that was in Alaska, they could incorporate that. It would be different. It would be a new experience for the viewer. I feel like it would be kind of enjoyable, at least for me. I know it would. Um, it was very kind of typical love-esque story. Um, it was okay. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
much prefer Josh Hartnett as Cooper in Trap. Um, but it was okay. Not, and once again, though, this is not my favorite vampire movie by any means. I probably will never watch it again, just because the dog thing and the little kid vampire. It's not first choice on this list, and that's okay. I don't know. What did you think of the ending?
Well, I feel like as we talk about like choice and end of life care and grief, that was like, oh, I'm dying. I want to have this moment with you. I thought that was very beautiful. I'm also with you though that it was very of the times we're going to have this hero and he's going to sacrifice himself so that he can save the whole town because it's the only way. That's the only option.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just wasn't my favorite, especially because they have all this tension building up. It's almost
Mhm.
like you're like, are they going to work it out? Are they not going to work it out? What's going to happen? And then, like, I guess you're not going to work it out because the only way to work it out was for him to die for you. Like, it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just wasn't And I feel like at that time too, if you pick up any sort of advice magazine, especially one that's geared towards feminine facing adolescents or young adult feminine facing persons, um, big themes were relationship closure. And in a demented way, that's the ultimate relationship closure, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you do have finality.
Yes. Yeah. I guess that's what they were going for. I don't know. Anna, would you ever live in Alaska and have 30 days of night? Like, could you do that?
Um, I don't know if I could, because I've read a lot about the towns in Alaska that do have the dark and the use of heat lamps and all of these kind of artificial sunshine products, and just the higher rates of seasonal depression and items like that. Maybe you would get used to it if you knew it was to be expected every year. I don't know that I necessarily would be able to do that. I think it would be really cool to live for 6 months on a research pod in Antarctica. I think that would be absolutely
Mm-hmm.
phenomenal. It would be super cool. I mean, as long as I could take my dog with me. But I don't know that I quite would have the fortitude for the cold and the dark. Um, I don't know if I could do it for a full 30 days. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think that I could do it for a whole 30 days.
Yeah.
No.
Props to the people that do it. If you live in Alaska or a region that does have extensive period of night and weather that maybe is different than what Margaret and I are accustomed to. I live in the United States on the East Coast. We have all four seasons where I live. Where Margaret lives closer to the Midwest and West Coast. You guys, you
Yeah, we get all
experience all
four
four
seasons.
seasons? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just very different from what we're used to. But hey, props, because I don't think I could do it.
No,
Well,
I don't think so
which
either.
character do you most relate to in this movie?
Yep. Great question as always. I'm gonna have to go with one of the two ladies that lives. Right, they're in the attic. They're kind of intervening when they need to, and they're also. I feel like they were the smartest. They're like, okay,
Mhm.
how do I survive? What do I need to do? And how do I lay low, play it cool while we have all these other people that are losing their minds a little bit. And likewise,
Mhm.
like they're grieving. You've just watched your
Yeah.
family member get brutally eaten by a vampire. Of
Mhm.
course, you're grieving and making bad decisions. I think back like when the dad with dementia wanders out of the attic and the son
Mhm.
goes after him, and how we want to save our loved ones. And in that situation, I mean, like you just decided to die. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
do that with you. How about you? Which person do you most relate to, even though I
Well,
kind of.
ironically, I relate to the son that goes after the dad. Um, surprise! I think that sometimes we get so caught up in caring for others that it's hard to identify what's best for ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
that's a work in progress. That every day is a little bit better. But anyone who has been a caregiver or who has a very intense connection to either immediate family or family that's farther away, or whatever the case is sometimes we push our own wants and needs aside to sustain what's going on with them. And I definitely saw a lot of that in his character. That's another thing actually that really got to me in the movie was I just really have a lot of empathy for that character dynamic, and having experience with the community with memory care issues, it definitely kind of knocked on the soft spot in my heart. Yeah. So, but I'm kind of glad that we don't relate to the alien vampire angry characters. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even if we did, that'd be okay too. But you did bring up a really good point about how most of the humans in this movie are traumatized. They're grief stricken because of what they've seen and what's going on. And it's also the disbelief of, is this really happening? And grief and loss can feel like that a lot of the time. All of these occurrences, usually lining up one after one after one, it really can make you question your sanity and your thought process and wonder if these things are really all happening. And that is normal during the bereavement process. If you are thinking these things and you're feeling those things, that is normal. That is not to be unexpected. Someone who has not been through the process or may not be as versed in bereavement is not likely to understand that. And that's okay too. But if you are to the point where you are starting to question your thoughts, please know that is normal. However, if you're not sure maybe what is real, what is not real, or maybe you feel like the tracks at the train station just aren't as lined up as they need to be, there are a lot of supports and services out there. Many local hospices have those. You can always call 988. We have a lot of warm lines and soft lines posted on Instagram. We usually talk about this every episode, but we definitely want you as a listener to know that there are resources out there and there is help available.
Yes, yes, yes. That you beautifully just brought that all together and tied it together.
Well, thank you. But it's an interesting movie. I mean, I feel like if a listener hasn't seen it, if you're super bored and you want to check it out, go for it. I think also if you love gore, this is a good movie for you. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
like the level of a cannibalism film, but it definitely gives you that blood splatter that you maybe
Yes.
desire.
Yeah. Like it's a graphic film
Mhm.
based on like a graphic novel. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you're in the mood for a brutally gory film, maybe not brutally, like there's other more gory films.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll like it.
Yeah, like 7 out of 10 on the brutishness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you like the blood splatter in the snow, check it out.
Yeah.
But until next
Anything else?
time, I
Oh,
don't think so. I guess I'll probably have to crawl back in the coffin again.
mm-hmm.
Get some more rest
Yeah.
before the sun goes down because I have a big night ahead of me. I mean, what?
Yeah.
All
Get
right.
your rest. You've had a big night. Thank you for listening, watching, like, subscribe, follow.
And until next time, see you.
Bye.